In this session, I'm going to show you how to retouch lips and teeth. These can be a challenging part of the face to edit actually, because there is often much texture on lips as well as color from lipstick. And sometimes the texture can look dry and need a fair amount of work, and sometimes the color could need a fair amount of work too if looking patchy and uneven. So the plan here is to work on texture and color separately so they don't interfere with each other too much. Let's see what we can do on this image. The first thing that I want to do is have a good look at the shot and assess the most problematic areas and probably start from that. In this case, I can see that the texture on the lips is looking dry and in quite a few places. So I definitely want to make sure that all of this is fixed. I also have some issues with the lipstick being out of the edges here of the lips, and probably a little bit of issues with the lipstick not being totally evenly applied. So when we retouch, if we want to maintain the lips quite natural, I don't necessarily like to have the lipstick going right into at the very edge of the lip, because usually the texture is completely different. This part of the lip is already a little bit wet, so the lipstick won't probably happen here naturally. But we definitely want to make it even all across the rest and the actual lips. We definitely obviously have the teeth to work on, and if we look closely at the teeth, there may be some things that we want to fix within the texture, let's say, and some things that we can fix within maybe the exposure or even the color. So some dodging and burning to do and a little bit of color to fix. So the very first thing that I would do is definitely start working on the lips. I'm not too concerned about teeth right now. Looking at the state of the bottom lip, that is definitely what I want to concentrate on. So to do that, I'm going to be using frequency separation. There's not many instances in which I would like to use frequency separation, but this can be very helpful on this occasion. So I'm going to duplicate this background twice, and I'm going to be calling the bottom layer low, and I'm going to be calling it color as well, so that we know that the low layer is going to guide the color, is going to be the layer that I go on it when I want to work on evening out the color. The top one is going to be called high and texture, because that is exactly what this layer will do. So on the low color, let me hide this for a second so we see what is happening here. On the low color, I want to go on filter, and I want to go on blur and Gaussian blur, and I want to choose a radius and an amount of blur that is as low as possible really, but that is enough to hide the detail from the lips. Now, I would probably have something around maybe 18, and I feel like it could be enough for me here. It gets rid of enough of the detail, and it's not too blurry. Then on the high layer, I'm going to go on image and apply image, and I need to change my layer here by selecting the low, and I want to change my blending mode to subtract, and I want to make sure that these settings are entered. The scale needs to be 2 and offset 128, and I will just OK it. Now I am going on the layer blending mode up here, and I'm going to go on linear light, and as you can see, I can now, the image is back to what it was. So this is what we're going to be working on. I like to start from the texture, and I work on the texture by using the clone stamp, and usually at 100% opacity. And in this case, I will set my sample on the current layer only, because like we said, we want to leave the color, and we're going to be working on the color separately after. So the aim here is that we're going to get a sample from where the texture is healed and looks fine, and we're going to go over areas where it doesn't. And one of the good things of the frequency separation is then, as we do that, get samples and copy and paste and copy and paste, we're not actually copy and pasting any color. It is just texture. It's just details, just texture. So think of that as you clone that you're not really looking at the color differences, we're only looking at the textural differences for now. So for instance, if I want to work on this side of the lip, because it looks like it could definitely use some work, I'm going to, for instance, get a sample from an area where the texture is similar. That is definitely something I need to look at, but I'm not really going to be bothered by the fact that the color might change. So for instance, if I want to get a sample from down here, this is going to be a darker color than here, but I'm not too bothered. However, the texture is different from here to here, so I'm actually not going to do that. So I'm going to be sticking to getting a sample from close by, because the texture on this part of the lip is actually quite different from the rest at this point in time, and I need to maintain that. So I will progressively clone away all of these areas of dark skin. And sometimes I need to be zooming in even more, and sometimes I need to be zooming out to be able to have a good view. Now in areas like this, you see these bits? The texture looks dry, but the color is also different. So these can be tricky areas, because it could look like you haven't done enough when you just fix the texture. Like here, you know, it looks like, okay, the texture is better. It doesn't look as dry, but it still doesn't look even. It still looks lighter. Well, that's something that we will address later on. So for now, just try and concentrate on the texture. And we will go bit by bit. Easier bit is, of course, to work on the small problems first, so that you create a nice clean area for yourself to go and get the bigger samples from. So anything like that. And I'm usually getting my sample from close by, because the texture is bound to be similar to my problem area close by. Working on the texture, and actually now I feel like I need to zoom out, because it's really easy to lose sight of what you're doing and where. So now you see I'm actually started by getting samples a little bit farther away, and that's because this whole area looks a little bit rough, so I might need to go elsewhere to get my sample now. Only working on the texture, and I want to make sure that it looks nice and smooth. Smooth, but of course still with texture on. More even, let's say. Some of the creases you definitely need to keep. I mean, in fact, you probably need to keep most of them. But some you might decide to maybe get rid of or swap them for something else. For instance, these are really deep, and I might just get them to finish at some point and not necessarily go all the way into the edge, or even get rid of that one, for instance. Any creases that go sideways or horizontally, they're not the standard vertical crease of a lip, can also potentially go if you feel like doing this more in-depth editing. So I'm happy with this part, and I'm happy with this part, and there is definitely this. There is the problematic area here to fix. So I'm going to progressively, I'm going to get some samples from these areas where the texture maybe isn't as intense, and bring some bits in here if I need to. get rid of some of the lines if they are maybe like overly deep. And at some point you might want to start working on the colors just to see if maybe what you are looking at is actually a color problem and not necessarily a textural problems, or at least it helps you get a slightly more finished look before you then proceed with working on the texture even more. Before you overdo it, do a little bit of the colors as well. So I'm just going to zoom out a bit, and I'm going to hide and show. Of course, I need to hide and show both of them. So I'm going to group them up already, and then Command G to group them. And I'm going to call this frequency separation. And I'm going to hide and show what we've done so far. I'm going to now be working on the colors a little. So on the colors, I'm going there with a brush. There's a few options actually. You can still work on the colors with the clone stamp at 100% or less, or you can work on it with a brush. And I do like this. The way I work on this is by using the color picker as well. So almost like if it was a clone stamp, I do the exact same steps. I've got Alt or Option, and I collect a sample, and then I go and paste it nearby. So I collect when I say sample, it's a color really in this case, and I go and paste it. If you want a more subtle result, of course you just drop the opacity. So I'm going to be dropping the opacity and maybe even the flow. That's it, that's a bit better. And with this, as you can see, it's just it's already starting to look very slowly, of course, because it's fine work, but more finished than just working on the texture. So now I can see, for instance, I work on these areas where the texture was a problem for me and I fixed the color there, whether that means that I need to do less texture work. The difference is already very huge. That was a little bit too dark for me, so I'm gonna undo it. And now you are not minding the texture at all. You're just looking at the colors. Where is it looking too dark? Where is it looking too bright? That is all you are caring about right now. For instance, there was a patch up here that was a little bit light. Let me show you. Now you can see it. A patch up here that was a little bit light compared to here. So I can either copy this color up here or this one down here. So I'm going here with the color picker and select this color. And then I'm going to go over this. And maybe my opacity is still a little bit high, so I'm going to drop it a little more. And then carry on getting color samples. Get it from here and go over this dark area, for instance. Get it from down here and go alongside the edge here. This can help, of course, to make the lipstick look a little bit evenly applied all over the mouth as well, without though obviously affecting the texture, which is nice. So I'm going to be getting a larger brush now, collect a sample, and I'm gonna go right here in the middle of it. Collect a sample from here and right here in the middle of it. And I've just undone something. I liked what it looked like over here, but not this bit. So maybe this bit needs something lighter, like this. Something lighter up here. And actually, I mean, looking at it, it looks a lot better than what it looked like when the texture was done, of course. And it kind of means like, probably don't actually have to do a lot more texture work. I'm introducing a little bit of a highlight, which I like, by picking a light color here and just painting it all across here. Now I might now decrease my brush size and get a sample from down here and extend this color right into the edge of the mouth here, like this. Just to define the edge of the lips just a little more. Maybe maybe blend that in just a little. And carry on just working on the outline. And on the corner. And for the corner you can either pick a darker tone if you think it needs it from the other side, because there was nothing to pick on here. And just extend it. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom out a little bit and hide and show this frequency separation that we have done so far. And this is how dramatic the change is already. So frankly, looking at it, I don't really think that I want to do much more to the texture at all here. And maybe just a couple of things. But for now, what I'm going to do is just keep on working on the colors on the top lip. And then move and work on the texture on the top lip and maybe tweak the bottom lip too. So here there's a few problematic areas for the lipstick. If you notice up here, there's an area that looks a little bit grayish. It looks like there isn't as much lipstick. There's of course an issue with the edge, and there's some areas here and here where the lipstick isn't quite well applied. So I'm going to be collecting my color from here and maybe extend it here alongside the edge. And then from here and extend it right in the corner. And from here and extend it towards the inner bit of the lip. And don't worry if you overlap it with the teeth, we can always mask it out. And I just keep on doing that. So now I get my sample from in here and go right in there. And I'm going to show you, if I hide and show the whole frequency separation and just look at that bit. Actually, let me do just one more step. And that was before and now it's now. So we start looking a little bit more even. In color, of course. There's no actual huge problems with the texture on the top lip, but it is looking very, very visible, the texture on the top lip. And that was occurring naturally. That top lip has a lot more texture than the bottom lip by default, even without the frequency separation. You can notice it. But we definitely want to maybe try and tone it just a little bit, tone it down just a touch, so that it blends a little more, especially now that we've toned down the texture of the bottom lip even more. We want to get the top lip to also tone down a touch in texture to match. So I'm just keep on extending the color by using my color picker and just defining the edges of the mouth just a little more. Maybe that was a little bit too dark, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it again. That's it. And now I'm going up on the texture layer, get my clone stamp, and this is when I'm going to work towards minimizing this texture up here just a little. So I'm going to start from the areas that are more obvious, like these bits up here. I'm going to redo it. These bits up here that look like they stand out a little bit, like the texture is very visible up there. So I'm going to get rid of that. And some of the lipstick texture up here, alongside the edges a little. And up here. As you can see, I'm getting rid of some things, but the blurry patch of color stays because, of course, I'm only working on the texture. And I might want to use this opportunity to clean out these bits as well. And then all of these tiny little textural problems, the bits of dryness right there. Again, you're not really worrying about the color. And if I see something that needs working on the bottom lip, I will go and I will move around. All of these little lines alongside the edge of the lips can also go. And these little hairs. All of these. I'll work on the hairs up here. I'll concentrate on the ones that are closer to the lips for this tutorial. Just to quickly get rid of them. And then I will come back onto my lips and work with a small brush into any little textural problems, like any bits like this where the skin still looks dry in small little areas. And they will seem like very small adjustments, but in beauty photography, it is mostly a lot of very small adjustments that will give you the beautiful final picture. Now I can heal all of this texture down here. Before and after, and we still have a bit to go. Might not be able to see this much once we are zoomed out at a decent level zoom, but while we are here and we are zoomed in quite a bit, we might as well. If I need to, I can of course open an age just to help me see, or even just to give the whole picture a good, you know, work, a good brightness. And adjustment just to begin with, and then go back on the texture. As long as that is, the layer is on top, let's call this 8. It might end up being our final brightness layer actually. We don't know, we might keep it. Just get rid of this black bits, and I'll do that by cloning, by getting a clean sample from somewhere else here. Okay, I want to tone down the opacity now, and I'm going to get samples from almost anywhere on my top lip and paste this top lip texture on the top lip itself with a low opacity clone stamp. What this does is it actually mutes the texture, and that's what I want on the top lip. I want this intense texture of the top lip to be more muted, and so more similar to the texture of the bottom lip. At the moment, this top lip texture is just a little bit too much compared, and we do want them to match a little better. Great, so this is how it was before, and this is how it is now so far. Next thing that I'm going to do is probably move this A layer on top, and I'm going to be dodging and burning. Now we have worked on the color, we've worked on the texture separately. I don't like to overdo frequency separation, and it's a very, very easy procedure to overdo. So I like to leave it when I feel like, okay, I've just done enough now, and I go and proceed with maybe healing if I need to, or dodge and burn. So I'm going to go dodging and burning now. So I open curves up here, and I'm just going to position it under my 8 layer, always remember. And I'm going to be calling it dodge. And I'm going to invert the mask, and of course, I want to get the curve to go up 1 notch. And then I'm going to get my brush, and I get a white color from here. And I'm going on an opacity of 10 and a flow of 10. And I'm back working on the masks. And of course, now I am dodging. So I'm focusing on all of the areas within the lip, especially noticing some of these areas on the top lip, if you notice, that are darker than they should be. They just look patchy dark, and I want to make sure that these aren't as dark, and also that the edge of the lip maybe isn't as dark. And I'm going to do the same work on the bottom lip, and I will play with my 8. In fact, I'll probably leave this like that because actually I like it, and instead of calling it 8, I'm just gonna call it brightness, and I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna open another one. I'm going to go adjustments, open another one, call this 8, because this is the one that we're going to mess up by just dragging the contrast and playing around with the brightness and so forth. And do what you have to do so that all of these areas are really brought to your attention even more. So as you can see now, the difference between these dark areas and, for instance, this light area on top here of the lip is quite a lot. So we want to dodge that. Go back on the dodge mask, making sure that the white is selected and the brush, and I start working on it. I start working on this zoom level, maybe just a little more, but I'm not going much farther in than this for now. And I start by brightening all of that. And even what I'm doing now is not touching the texture, of course. So I'm still separating the texture from everything else. In this case, I'm working on the brightness and not on the color as such. But of course, if something looks dark red and I brighten it, I'm affecting the color too in a way, and it will end up looking like a brighter shade of red. So drawing in circles or wherever I see that is looking just a little bit too dark. And in a minute I might change my aid just to help me see things a little bit better. And the dodge can be a really effective tool as well to diminish how deep certain creases look on the lip, because when they look very deep, of course they look dark, and so dodging in that crease can actually help. So I'm going to do that on this top lip. I'm going to dodge in some of these creases because there is still a lot of texture on this lip on the top. So I'm going to be dodging in it a little bit, and I'm not touching the texture. I'm just going to make the creases look less deep and therefore less visible. I'm just going to dodge for a little longer, and then we're going to have a look at the before and after dodge. Before and after, before and after. Now, there is definitely the potential for some burn to do, so we're going to be doing that. So we open another curves, this time dot in the center of the line, drag it down, and we're going to be calling it burn, invert the mask. And with the same settings, I'm going to now be aiming at areas that look a little bit too bright that they should. And for instance, this is not as easy to spot, I find, but usually in the shadows, for instance, right here, probably alongside the edge of the lip, or maybe even down here. And of course, we can tweak the aid at any point if we need to, like maybe bring the contrast down a little bit. Darken just in there a little bit. I'm using it correctively at this point, so I am not really looking to creatively introduce shadows or anything like that, because I will do that in a minute. But I can look at filling in, let's say definitely darkening, this is what I am doing. Any little spots, they can be small and sometimes hard to spot, but if you do spot them, anything that is looking a little bit too light, we can use this in. Maybe here alongside the edge. And maybe tweaking the aid. Let's see what else we've got. Zoom out. Maybe just a little bit with a larger brush, just a touch up there. And in there. Okay, so I think for now I'll be happy with this level of burn. So I'm going to now open, as you probably know already by now, I'm going to be opening again a similar thing to dodge, but we're going to be calling it highlights. And with this, I really want to enhance the or even create sometimes highlights like in the center of the lip, on the top of the top lip, maybe even on the teeth if I need to. We haven't done the teeth at all, but maybe since we're there, we can use some of that there. And to do that, I'm probably going to get a slightly bigger brush. I could use a higher opacity. If you feel confident, you can use a higher opacity. Let's see if I just use this opacity, what happens. So I'm just going to draw just like that, a little bit of a line, just making sure that it's not as obvious. So I'm not just going to go a line always in the same spot. I will always do, maybe I will go slightly below just to make sure that this fading. And I will do the top lip a little bit as well, even up here a bit and on the edges of it. Let's hide the aid for this, that also helps. Just up there. I would even do the teeth a bit, it tends to make them look a little bit whiter. Nice. And the next thing, I will go and open another curves, of course, this time going down, so just like burn, but this is going to be called shadows. And with this we want to go and deepen areas that are already in the shadow, or that should be more in the shadow. So for instance, the inside over here. And don't worry about the teeth. For this I would just go over it. I would just go over it with a big brush. I think you'll get a much better result. I will go here in the corner of the lips a little, up here a little, maybe the inside of the bottom lip, just a little right there alongside the edge. Just a little bit over there. It just gives a little bit of the extra depth to these lips. Before and after. In fact, I will probably extend this a little bit more to the inside of the top lip and a little bit more up here. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to go back to the bottom of my layer menu where I was working on actual image. I'm going to open a new layer on top of the frequency separation because it's not necessarily going to be part of it. And I'm going to use the clone stamp at probably 100%. And I'm going to use this to tidy up these areas where the lipstick is obviously coming out of the edges of the mouth. To do that, I'm going to get a sample from really close by, just above, and I'm going to go right inside. Oh, the reason why we're not seeing what I'm doing is because I'm still set on current layer, which was a setting that was working for the frequency separation, but not for this, because now I'm working on an empty layer and I need to tell Photoshop to get my sample from current and below. I always forget to change this, so of course it happened. I'm getting my sample from here and I clone down here. And again, sample from here as close as possible and I go down there. Again, sometimes you need to get another one. And let's see if we are being too defined with the edge of that lip. I think it's just about right. It could be maybe a little bit slightly blurrier. It looks quite a lot more defined than it was before. Maybe I'll undo and I'll do it again with a bigger brush like this. So sample and go alongside the lip. Sample and go alongside the lip. And I will go even alongside the areas where there wasn't any patchy areas, but just to define it. And I like to do this from the outside in. And if you have copied any texture across, you see there is a repetition of texture here on the face. And this is something that can be very easily fixed with the healing. I'm going to be back on the clone stamp and I'm going to be using it also here to create a bit more definition on the V line here. Just like that and like that. fix, maybe even heal some of these, not heal, but clone some of these bits here where the texture looks a little bit more, very prominent. And then I'm going to be doing the same over here. However, here, as you can see, it's a little bit more blurry because there's depth of field. So I'm going to be using a big brush size. So the edges of my cloning are not going to be pin sharp. It still defines, but we want to maintain a similar level of blur on this side as well. And I might fix this area too. In fact, this area is probably more easy to fix with the by the saturating this bit later on. And I'm going to be doing the bottom of the lip, just to give it a nice shape. And if there's any bits of lipstick that are there, they shouldn't, then you can fix it with this too. Just like that. Great, so it is starting to look a lot better. So what I'm going to do now for a few minutes is actually go back and dodge a little bit around the lips, just to give a more finished look to the image, because it's sometimes hard to picture how the mouth could fit in this skin. So I'm going to select the aid, and I'm going to start working by dodging the skin. Okay, so I have dodged the skin on the face as well, just to give this image a more finished look, so that the lips blend in and they look like they belong to this face. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is looking at evening out the color between the top lip and the bottom lip. And if you look closely, the bottom lip, of course, it probably catches the light a little bit more, but also it is definitely darker at the top. So we want to open an adjustment, and I can just open a simple brightness and contrast adjustment, and I will put it at the top of all of my shadows and highlights and dodge and burn, and I will darken everything a little. Apply the mask, brush, white color. I'll probably work with an opacity that it's almost 100% and a flow of 100, and I'm just going to go along the whole of the bottom lip with this, and just making sure that I stay within the edges here. And then I'm gonna play around with the adjustment. I'll probably zoom out a little bit, just play around with it so that I get to a level. And I like to do this just to make sure that I'm selecting things correctly in my mask. So I'm actually going to undo this selection. Undo the selection like here. Go back down with the brightness, and now from scratch apply it all over the bottom lip. And that's better. And now I'm going to go up here and fix it by try and match the top. So do you remember what we've done so far? We have opened a new layer. You can do the same thing. Open a layer, pick a white color, and with 100% opacity you can draw a white patch. And then with your color picker you can select different areas of the top lip and different areas of the bottom lip and find out whether they are matching. And now obviously looking at them, it looks like this is a pretty good match. So I would actually be very happy with it. Or if not, you can probably just judge by looking at it. I'm going to delete this layer now. And I'm going to have another nice look at my shot. And what I might do is just work on a couple of things that stand out for me still is this patch over here, which I think could be a matter of desaturating. And this line, this bit of lipstick right here at the bottom edge, it looks a little bit too vibrant for me compared to the rest of the colors. So I'm going to be opening a hue and saturation adjustment, drag it right at the top of everything I have done, and I'm gonna call it just desaturation. And I'm going to desaturate of a certain amount, not sure how much at this stage. And I'm going to invert the mask to make this invisible, drop my opacity and my brush size as well. And I start working in this corner to bring this redness down a little. Just right in here, I'm going to paint over it and desaturate it. And then with a slightly larger brush and actually even a lower opacity here, I'm going to go right under here, just on the bottom rim of the lip that is looking a little bit vibrant, and I'm going to go and desaturate it a little. And actually, since I have a low opacity anyway, I can have a good look at the mouth and go and touch up any areas that are still looking a little bit too vibrant and standing out a bit too much. And zoom out and let's have a look at before and after. So I might want to do it a little bit more in the corners here. And then I might want to have a look at dodging that area just a little more. 10 and 10. And dodging just this bit here. And I'm going to also go on another. I really want to get rid of this even more. So let's see if I can brighten a little, cool it down a little, and desaturate a little. Drag it right at the top, invert the mask, and apply it right here. Okay, so that's much better. And I don't want to get rid of the whole of the shadow, if you want to call it that, this dark area. I don't want to lose it completely, because getting rid of these bits is going to make the whole thing look pretty fake. So I do want to keep it, but I don't want it to look red. And if there's anything left that's still looking funny or red after, I can always go back and heal any extra bits. Now, I'm going to have a look at the teeth, because we haven't done that yet. So I'm going back down here, and this layer, this was cloning and healing. And I'm going back on it, and I'm going to do the teeth. So the teeth, I'm going to start with the healing, and with the healing, I'm going to get rid of any little textural problem. In this case, even colors, in fact. If there's any discoloration of the teeth, I can easily get rid of it with these two, any lines. So that's already looking better. And if I want to tidy up any of these highlights, in fact, maybe get rid of this little bubble up here. I will just do that by extending this. So getting a sample from below, right in line with this line that I had. Get rid of maybe some of these little highlight bits, and then move on to another tooth. I can tidy up inside a little, definitely get rid of any discoloration, any lines. And you don't have to, if the teeth are looking alright to begin with, you really don't necessarily have to do this step. In fact, it's probably going to look even more natural if you don't do this, or at least not too much of this. But sometimes it's necessary. I'm going to follow this line, getting a sample right below and keeping in line with it by looking where my new sample falls. I can see it, and I'm going to paste that on top of it. And now I might need the clone stamp because I'm getting close to the edge. I want to get 100% opacity and a fairly small brush, and I'm going right in there. And then I'll try and blend that in with the healing, like that. So for me, this is now looking good now when it comes to teeth. So what it'll be left to do is dodge them just a little. So I'll go on the dodge layer, which is the same layer that I've used for everything. And I'm just going to dodge them just a little towards the edges here where they start to look a little bit gray. Again, I don't really want to do it too much. They're already looking pretty glossy. I am going to go on Aid and use it. And target all of these dark gray areas here within the tooth. Even that out. Now the next thing that I see, I like the look of the teeth, but they are looking a little bit yellow right in between them. So I am going to be opening a hue and saturation layer again, and I'm going to desaturate, maybe add a little touch of lightness. And I'm going to invert the mask. And with a brush, white brush, and a higher flow and a higher opacity, maybe 30-40%, I'm going to start painting this in the area that I need to fix. So just right here in between. And my brush is small, it's just literally covering that yellow line. And I can see already as I do it that it's getting better, but it's not quite fixing it. So I might need to do something else. And it's fine because I've obviously just randomly selected an adjustment, a level that I thought could work, but I don't really know. So I'm going back up here and I might give it a little bit more lightness. And I might give it a little bit of nothing, no hue. It doesn't look that good. I'm going to desaturate instead. Okay, so this is what it looked like before in there, and this is what it looks like now. All I need to do now is I need to blend my selection, and as you can see the edges here. So what I want to do is lower the opacity and go and blend in what I've done just alongside of it. Great, I've desaturated even a little bit more. I don't want to select the lips, so I'm going to mask these out. And this is looking all right there. Lovely, so we've had before and after. Great, so I'm actually pleased with that. I'm just going to have another look at the lips and have a look at maybe the fixing any little things right here at the top with the healing tool. And maybe the clone stamp too if I need to. Lovely. One last thing that I am noticing is going back on the burn and opacity and flow 10, zooming in and just darkening this little bit here, just a little more. Maybe the very tip here as well. And I'll do the same right at the bottom. In fact, I can actually go right to the bottom with a clone stamp and just get it to use it to smooth the edge here and just give it a really nice shape. And if I'm introducing any texture repetition, I will heal it. Sealing a couple more bits that I see I could do with a little bit of work. And I'll be really happy with this lip now. The one thing that I would do now is I would go at the very top, last thing that I've done, and I would go Shift Option Command E, which creates again a copy of the image with all of these layers already applied and merged on, and I will go and liquefy. And this is the stage where you can straighten the teeth a little bit or the shape of the lips if you want to. So I will probably start by getting a small brush just on the normal warp tool in liquefy and just lower this bit of the tooth just to straighten them a little bit. Just push it down very gently. And that, when it comes to teeth, in fact, it would be done for me. And now I can have a look at the overall shape. Of course, if I want to change anything, such as for instance, maybe drop this part of the lip a little bit more because it was a little bit higher on that side. And I could push this down just a little so it's not as high up and it covers the teeth a little more. And it's probably all I would do, actually. But if any of the edges of the lips are not as tidy, then this is where I can go and just tidy it up and push it where it needs to. If you want to make the lip look bigger, of course you can. However, we'll probably end up changing the lip a little bit too much. So I wouldn't probably do it at this stage. I will okay it. Lovely. And then I will duplicate and apply maybe a little bit of sharpening to it, maybe like that, around 1 or 1.5 radius, and about 80% will work for me, and okay it. So I'm now done with working on the lips. However, if I wanted to finish off this image, what I would do is just quickly open a curves, probably in the burn direction, and get a big brush, opacity and flow 10%, and I will start by getting some shadow painted in the areas where I need it, such as under the lip a little bit is already there, and a little bit here in the center, a little bit on the sides, right here. And then I will crop and rotate it so that the lip is a little bit straighter. So maybe like that. And I will just give it a little bit of a crop too. And that's it. I'm going to select everything and group it up and call it all, and I'm going to show you the entire before and after of our lips. In this case, the results are quite dramatic because we had a pretty dramatic starting point, of course, and also it's a close-up of a lip, so we want to make sure that everything is right, spot on. But if your image isn't a close-up of a lip or a beauty shot, you can still use all of the techniques and the steps of this tutorial video, but less in depth. To recap, in this tutorial we have used healing to fix small textural problems, used the frequency separation to fix larger textural problems such as dry skin on the lips, use the frequency separation to even out the appearance of lipstick and color in general across the lips, use the dodge and burn to further even out the exposure on the lips, enhance natural highlights and shadows to enhance the depth and look of the lips, defined edges of the lips using clone stamp. We have evened out texture and exposure of the teeth with healing and dodge and burn. We have enhanced teeth color and corrected teeth color using hue and saturation. We have used the liquify subtly to enhance the shape of the mouth. And finally, we have sharpened to enhance texture.